Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Mistborn Era 1 by Brandon Sanderson. So the way I'm going to structure this video is that I'm going to do a spoiler-free section and then a spoiler section for the Final Empire. And then afterwards, I'm going to repeat the process for the next two books. I'm not going to do much more of an intro. I'm going to keep it short and sweet and just go right into the first book, The Final Empire. This was a really good start to the series. I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. If for those of you who don't know, Mistborn is set in a world where 1,000 years ago, the hero loses, and now in present time the Lord Ruler is in charge, and the Lord Ruler is this unbeatable omnipotent being who has an iron grip on the whole empire. So it's within this empire where we first meet our protagonist Vin, and Vin is this untrusting street urchin who is very cynical, and she likes to hide in the shadows because drawing too much attention to herself in the past has had some negative effects, to say the least. Vin is also very traumatized when you first meet her because she was heavily abused by her brother Reen in the past. Vin eventually meets Kelsier, who's the leader of another thieving crew, and she eventually discovers that this crew is trying to overthrow the Lord Emperor himself, which is just hasn't even come close to being done in the past. Kelsier also happens to be a Mistborn, and what that means is he has access to all the abilities granted by the magic system in this called Allomancy, and basically he teaches Vin how to use her allomantic powers as well. So this book is a really good fusion of like the heist storyline into the fantasy genre. So if you're a fan of stories like Ocean's 11, you should like this book. I don't know. You get to see the whole plan unfold, and you get to see how every crew member has a role in the plan and how they carry it out. I don't really have any cons for this book, and as far as pros I can give you without spoiling anything, the characters for this are a really big highlight. Vin is a great protagonist in this book. When we first meet her, she's this traumatized, frail girl, and we get to see her grow from this as she meets Kelsier's crew. Kelsier himself is also a highlight of this book for sure. When we first meet him, he's this charismatic, ruthless guy, and he's willing to do whatever he needs to do to get the job done. And he always has an air of optimism around him, no matter how bad things get in the plan. World building in this is also great, but it's a Sanderson book. What else were you expecting? We get a glimpse into the divide between the Ska and the nobility, and just how badly the nobility treat the Ska. They really don't care for them as humans. They're subhuman to the nobility. Through the world building, we also got to learn about the deepness and the history of the world surrounding it. It's this evil something that threatened to destroy the world before their Lord Ruler stopped it. We also got to see the superstitions that the Ska believe in surrounding the mists, and we also got a deeper look at the disparity between classes. And it's so bad that at a point in this book, a nobleman just straight up slits the throat of a kid and nobody bats an eye. Another thing to touch on is the romance in this book. Now, personally, if there's a ship to be shipped, I'll ship it. I'll be there for that. But in general, I'm not a fan of romance in my stories. It was okay in this book because it's still at the shipping stage, but I'm kind of indifferent towards it in this. So the magic system in this is phenomenal. It's called Allomancy, and the way it works is that you have these individual allomancers, and they burn metals. And what that does is it allows them to have access to a certain ability relating to whatever metal they burn. So for example, if you burn tin, you get enhanced senses. If you burn pewter, you get enhanced strength. The fights in this are really good. Sanderson choreographs his fights really well and makes them easy to follow. That's all I'm going to talk about for the spoiler-free section. For the spoiler section, I don't really have as much to say for this book compared to the other two because I feel like this is more self-contained than the other two. It's just a self-contained heist story that you don't really need to continue onwards from if that's how you're feeling once you finish it. But it does definitely hint at bigger happenings in the background. I'm not going to hold the book up for the rest of the video because that was honestly pissing me off very much. For the spoiler section, I'm not going to base this off the plot. I'm just going to talk about each individual character in turn, and then I'll discuss the plot that concerns them too at the same time. So before I even talk about characters, I'm going to talk about the fights in this book. They were so good. Like, this wasn't really a fight, it was more of a chase. But when Vin and Kelsey had to escape Critic Shaw towards, like, I think it was like halfway through the book, that was just so well written. It had my heart pounding from start to finish. I loved that chapter. Then also Kelsier's final fight versus the Inquisitor before he gets mashed by fucking Lord Ruler. That was so good. It was one of the best fights I've ever read. Granted, haven't read that much so far, but I'm sure it will stack up once I have read more. I also like the fight where Vin killed Shanna Lariel after their ATM-fueled battle on top of, I think it was Keep Venture. I really like this because it showed how Vin's able to incorporate creativity and quick thinking into her fights. Her journey to Reed was just a blast. She starts off as this street urchin, as I already said, and then we learn why she is the way she is when we learn how she was abused by Reen, her brother. Of course, by the end, we learn that Reen actually always loved her and died protecting her. He just showed his love in like literally the most twisted way he could have possibly shown it. We get to slowly watch her learn how to trust thanks to the people she meets throughout the story, like Sazed, Elend, and Kelsier, of course, were like most essential to her growth. Kelsier gave her the true father figure she never really had. Sazed taught her how to have more confidence and to get more in touch with her feminine side, and then Ellen really taught her how to love. Kelsier also gets great development in this book. We initially see him as this ruthlessly efficient leader who has no problem killing whoever he needs to, whether they be ska or noblemen. As long as they're on the side of the Lord Ruler, he has no problem killing them. But we eventually see that there's much more to him than meets the eye. We learn he's not just overthrowing the Empire for revenge or control and the power that comes with it. He's doing it to make the dream of his late wife Mare a reality. Towards the end of the book, thanks to Vin, we get to see Kelsier learn that not all noblemen are the same and that his view towards them was a bit too heavily biased. Unfortunately, this revelation came a bit too late for Kelsier. He got no-diffed by the Lord Ruler, got speared right through the chest, and this happened just before the change could take place in him for the better. My love for Kelsier shot up after his death when it was revealed that it was all part of the plan and that he set himself up as this deity for the Ska so that when he died, it would motivate them enough to finally take action against the Lord Ruler. It was just such a good reveal. It was big brain shit from Kelsier. It really was a good testament to his genius, and it just shows you that there is always another secret. I loved the Lord Ruler as a villain in this book. Through the world building, we got to see how he enforces his authority over the whole empire with the use of like inquisitors and different cantons of obligators. And we also get to see how he keeps a firm grip on the noblemen with his monopoly of Atium. He even eliminated an entire lineage of potential threats with the use of a breeding system on the terracemen. And he done this just to breed them into docile servants for the noblemen to use. And I just really loved how the Lord Ruler has such a presence without ever being actually present. Then when we finally do see him, he's just a man. And he's a very powerful man, but a man nonetheless. And we go so long without seeing him in the book that we just build up this image in our heads of some godly being, and then what we're presented with towards the end is just something far more mundane. So Ellen is Vin's love interest in this book, and I don't really give a shit about him in it. He's a good guy, a bit idealistic to say the least, but I don't really care about him at all as a character. I did give him bonus points though towards the end. He did risk his life to save Vin twice, even if he didn't need it the first time, but definitely earned brownie points for that. The last person I'm going to talk about is my favorite in the whole series, Sazed or Sazed, I'm not sure, I'm just going to call him Sazed. Sazed is good in this book, but he's far from at his best. Sazed is Terraceman Keeper, and the Keepers are these group of Terracemen who are in charge of collecting and storing information, and they store this information in metal mines. Sazed specializes in information pertaining to religions, and you see him many times throughout the book trying to preach religions to the other members of the crew. If I was to try and summarize Sazed in this book, I'd say that he's simply a G, because he is a G. He shows the utmost loyalty to the crew, and once he is charged with protecting Vin, he's really dedicated to it, and he saves their lives twice, and towards the end he almost dies doing so. I also really enjoyed his interactions with Vin by themselves. He really taught her how to be more noblewomanly. I don't know if that's a word, it is now, and while he was doing all this teaching, he sprinkled in some nice life lessons in the mix. I've attempted numerous times to say this in a list without missing a name, and I failed every time, so I took note. So we also met Clubs, Yeadon, Dachshund, Breeze, Ham, Spook, and Kelsey's brother Marsh as other crew members. And they're good in this book, but they don't really do enough to warrant me talking about them specifically. I'll talk about them more in the other books as they grow more prevalent. We also got to see Hoyd in this book. That was pretty cool. He had a quick interaction with Kelsier. Wasn't really much more than that of him. I think he appears in a later book by name only. So something else I really enjoyed in this were the passages that come before each chapter. I don't know what these are called. If there's a term for them, let me know in the comments, but for the rest of the video I'll just call them the passages that come before the chapters. Sorry. The passages in this book were about Alendi, and he's the real hero who was meant to defeat the Deepness way back. And then it's eventually revealed that Alendi was killed by Rashek, who is the Lord Ruler, and Rashek was a Terrace Pac-Man who was with Alendi, and I think he stabbed him in his sleep. I really loved watching this mystery unfold as the story progressed. So finally, I want to talk about the ending for this book. I'm not going to lie to you, the ending for this book left a serious sour taste in my mouth. We get to the ending and Vin is fighting the Lord Ruler. She's getting pummeled by my boy Rashek. She is not able to back the beef at all. And then she just gets this complete Deus Ex Machina. I don't know if I even pronounced that right. And then she's suddenly able to control the mists, and she kills the Lord Ruler using the mists. I really wasn't a fan of this at all. She just was suddenly able to supercharge her abilities using the mists, and this does get explained later on in the book, but I'm not going to forgive this book for it just because it gets explained later. I don't think that's really a fair judgment. So another thing that really pissed me off towards the ending was that after Vin uses the mist on Rashek, he's degraded into this sickly state as an old man. And it's at this point where he tells Vin, Marsh, and Sazed collectively that they have no idea what they've done. They have no idea what Rashek has done for humanity, and that in killing him, they've doomed themselves. And then all three of them unanimously and wordlessly decide to say didn't ask plus ratio, essentially. It made no sense. Like, when it comes to Vin, fair enough. She has consistently been shown to be this kind of shoot first, ask questions later kind of girl. However, Marsh and Says are consistently shown to be two of the most, or if not the two most sensible characters in the crew. Why on earth would you not ask the Lord Ruler some questions, or at least let him finish what he was going to say before spearing him? It made no sense. And to make it even worse, throughout the whole book, Vin, an annoying amount of times, talks to herself about wondering what the deepness is. And she didn't even think in that moment to ask him at least what the deepness is. Seriously, it just did not make any logical sense to not do any of those things I mentioned. The only reason it was not done is because it would spoil stuff that isn't even revealed until the end of the last book. So these two things did really kind of sour the ending for me, but it didn't make me dislike the book, obviously. I really enjoyed the book from start to right up before finish. Even in the epilogue, Vin is like, maybe we shouldn't have killed him. He was saying all this shit or whatever she was saying. And Says goes, no, Vin, it's okay. He was dying anyways. What? How is that justification for what they done? That just didn't make sense to me at all. So while I did find very little wrong with this book, it didn't really do enough to justify a super high score for me. So for that reason, I'm going to give this book an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, here we go. The second book in this trilogy is Well of Ascension. I'm going to be straight up, guys. Did not like this book. Not a fan of this book. Would prefer to skip this book. If I could sum this book up in any one word, it would be tedious. There really isn't a better word to describe this for me. Something I noticed about this book is that it was much longer than it needed to be. There was really no justification for this book to be 600 pages, I felt like, and there seems to be some kind of pattern for Sanderson, because I read Rhythm of War and Oathbringer as well. Both books were 1,200 pages compared to like 1,000 for the other two, I think. There was just no reason for those two to be that long either. Don't know why he does this, but I think he just gets to a point where there's a lot of stuff in there just to take up space, I feels like. Not going to do much of a spoiler-free section for this. Didn't really do much of one for any of the three books, I'm realizing now, but basically this book takes place about a year after the events of the Final Empire, and we meet our cast of characters as they've established a kingdom in Luthadel. I don't know if Luthadel is pronounced that way. If you have to pronounce the TH, I'm Irish. I'm not going to be doing that. But anyways, they set up their kingdom in Luthadel, and the Final Empire is now a kind of broken up continent of makeshift kingdoms. Our characters are met with the challenge of having an army posted outside the city walls. First off, this book's title is the biggest cap ever. It should not have been called Will of Ascension. It should have been called like Politics and Sneaky Links. I know book titles don't need to be literal, but holy shit, the first 80% of this book, it felt like, was just a repetition of political meetings and melodrama surrounding Vin and Ellen's relationship, and then on the side Vin had Zane, her sneaky link, and she kept going out to meet with him, and it was just so fucking repetitive and boring. Like, why on earth was there a love triangle introduced? I cannot wrap my mind around it. I feel like it was just such a unnecessary addition. I have a hard time recommending this book, even if you do like politics. I'd say just read it so you can get to the Hero of Ages, because that's great. The politics in this book just weren't intriguing or engaging in the slightest to me. I do like politics in stories. I loved it in Stormlight Archive, and I am a fan of The Legend of the Galactic Heroes, if you know what that anime is. So believe me when I say I am a fan of politics in stories. The politics in this just weren't good. There was a decent chapter every now and then, but most of it all just felt the same to me. The only really interesting thing that I got from majority of the politics was that Ska, once in power, can be just as bad as noblemen, but that's such an obvious trope, I feel like. So Elend is actually the secondary main POV now after Vin. He might even have more page time than Vin, I can't remember, to be honest. So Elend is the king of Luthadel, and what he's done is he's established this assembly, which is where noblemen and Ska alike can come together and have a say in the operation of the city. A lot of people love Elend in this book. I wasn't really a fan, to be honest. I didn't like him at all in this book. He goes through a necessary journey, and he does get good characterization. I just didn't enjoy the development of the arc. I didn't enjoy actually reading the arc. Majority of the arc felt like just really dull, repetitive meetings and equally repetitive worries over his relationship with Vin. Like, he's always worrying if she really loves him or if she's gonna leave him. And speaking of Vin, I absolutely, unequivocally could not stand Vin in this book. Vin is constantly going from emotional extreme to extreme, and it's done in a way that just isn't believable at all to me. She's constantly worrying about Ellen, and it gets to the point where it feels like all she does in this book is punch guys worry about Elend, and meet up with her sneaky link. So this book isn't all bad. Sazed and Breeze definitely shine in this book. They really carried me through it. I don't know if I'd read it without Sazed and Breeze, honestly. So Sazed has a great arc surrounding like a very thought-provoking theme of like the prophesied hero. He also has some really good self-discovery during this. And then we get some unexpected but really appreciated development of Breeze. We get to learn more about how a suitor can affect you and the relationships you develop. I just realized I have not held this up for this portion of the video yet. Here's the Well of Ascension cover. Here's the spine. We'll not be holding this for the rest of the video because it is a pain in the ass to hold those up. They're hardbacks, they're more heavy than paperbacks, obviously. Not going to be doing that. And that's all I have to say for the spoiler-free section. Let's get into the spoilers. So, Tensoon, Sazed, and Breeze were the three definite highlights of this book. So back to Breeze, we don't really get as much from him as the other POV characters, but it's really a case of quality over quantity for me when it comes to Breeze. So we get to see that his way of acting nonchalant is kind of just a front, and we see that he's a much more kind and caring person than he lets on. And we also learn a bit more about the hardships that being a suitor can cause people. So Breeze has been using his emotional elemency for a long time now, constantly, and it's gotten to a point where he struggles with the relationships he's developed because he's established these relationships, but he's not sure if they're genuine or if they're only a result of his unconscious emotional elemency that he uses on them. There isn't really much more to say about Breeze. I just really love this added depth to him and watching his budding friendship with Clubs, because Clubs is the only person he's sure isn't being affected by his elemency. In hindsight, I'm sure Breeze was an elementic savant, but it just didn't click to me while I was reading the book. Breeze has a really tough time during the final raid on Luthadel, and he ends up having to watch Clubs die, and that just leaves him in a catatonic state, and that was just tough to read. And we also learned that he's a nobleman the whole time, which was pretty wild. So next up is Tensoon. Watching his relationship with Vin develop throughout the book was just great, and it was some of the few chapters I enjoyed from Vin's POV. When we first met Tensoon, he was just the embodiment of sass. He just always gave Vin snarky replies, and he always came off as standoffish. So he starts to come around as Vin does the same, and she tries to show him more respect and show a genuine interest in him and his people. Vin chose Tensoon for what was probably the first time that a master can be kind, and this earns his loyalty to such a degree that he even breaks the Conjurer's sacred contract, and he turns against his real master, Zane. And the twist that Tensoon was the imposter the whole time, that was such a genius implementation of hiding in plain sight. Like, I know I always thought it was Doxin from just as soon as Vin had her first conversation with Doxin, I was like, okay, it's going to be Doxin, I know for a fact. And it just wasn't. And I just never stopped to think that it was Tensoon, because why would I? It was so obvious that it would just never occur to me. Of course, the person who is known for being somebody that impersonates people is going to be the imposter. I really liked all the antagonists in this book. We have Zane, who's this insane Mistborn, and he has the voice of God in his head, and it's later revealed that he is in fact Straff Venture's Mistborn, and then it's even revealed that he's Ellen's half-brother. And I just really enjoyed watching his careful manipulation of Vin. He really had her in like the palm of his hand for a majority of the book. I really like reading characters that are kind of experts at like subterfuge and subtle manipulations. So Zane gives off this aura of confidence, and through reading his POVs we kind of learned that this is fake and that he's just putting it on. And we see that he's really this mentally unstable guy, and he's kind of hedging his bets on Vin being the one to save him, and this kind of fuels his infatuation with her. Of course, by the end we learn Zane was never really insane. The voice of God in his head was an actual person talking in his head, and it was in fact the deepness. Now, I mentioned Straff before. I love Straff in this book. He is the Sadius of Mistborn. You know, he's this guy who is he's the product of the nobleman culture. He's a merciless and crafty king, and he sees everybody as tools to be used, even his own children. He has so many children coming out the woodworks with Ska wives, or not wives really, but Ska mistresses, and he does this so that he can have as many Alamancers as possible. His relationship with Zane is just so tragic to me, because he has such a strong thirst for power and control, and he assumes Zane as his son to be the same, and this just isn't the case, and it leads to such a crippling paranoia kind of, and he's just so paranoid that Zane wants to poison him. Straff is kind of unable to feel love, and it really just prevents him from seeing that despite how he treated Zane, the whole time Zane still loved him, and he never tried to poison him once. So Set was another antagonist that I liked in this book. He doesn't really do as much in this book, but he is the ruthless king that Ellen needs to be, and it was just really entertaining to see them interact with each other and watch their verbal exchanges. And also, quick shout out to Alrian, I think that's how you pronounce Set's daughter's name, but she came in so clutch. If it wasn't for her, Set would not be there at the end to back the beef. And I just really enjoyed her character. She's pretty interesting because she has this, what's the word they use in the book? She had this puffy aura about her, and she really used it to her advantage to make people underestimate her. But now for Sazed, Sazed was such a blessing to have in this book. I really don't know if I would even be finished the book yet if Sazed was not in it. And I'm done the whole trilogy at this point. Sazed was another main POV character in this book, and we got to see him deal with his inner turmoil of having to choose between his responsibilities as a keeper and his responsibilities towards the entire empire. Something else I really loved that we got from Sazed was that he finds this text from Quan, who was the original announcer of the original hero Alendi, and through this text we are introduced to this really interesting theme that I loved reading about through the book, and it was the theme of the prophesied hero, and it made you kind of look at the whole nature of the prophecies themselves, and it asked some really thought-provoking questions such as are these prophecies a bit too convenient? Is there any real merit to prophecies, or do people just want to believe in them and so they make pieces fit? So this really comes to a crescendo at the end of the book when it's eventually revealed that the whole time the whole prophecy of the Hero of Ages was just a subtle ploy by the Deepness to get Vin to come to the Well of Ascension to actually free it from its prison, which it was there. And this was just such an amazing twist. It turned the whole trope on its head, which Sanderson loves to do, and it was just such a good ending to the book. As we watch Sazed come to the conclusion that his part to play in the bigger happenings in the world take precedence, we also have to see him come to terms with the fact that he isn't like other keepers, and we see him accept the fact that he is at times a warrior. And we see this during the final raid on Luthadel by the Colossus army, when they're invading and he's in charge of his own city gate and he's in charge of his own group of men, and then he tells the men to fucking fight, and you get so hyped, and I had goosebumps, I was sweating, I was going fucking crazy reading that part. This was by far my favorite battle in the whole book, and just getting to watch Sazed really pop off with the full capabilities of his Furukami was just so fun to read. We also meet Sazed's love interest, Tyndall, I think is how you pronounce her name. We meet her in this book as well, and I really loved Tyndall as a character, but I just wasn't really a fan of how she was used in the book. While I really enjoyed how she helped Vin accept that her noble side and her street urchin side are both parts of her, she really helped her come to terms with that. But I just didn't really enjoy how she was used in Elend's arc and Sazed's arc. I'll talk about her role in Elend's arc more when I talk about Elend himself, but when it comes to Sazed, Tyndall's death acted as the catalyst that sparked Sazed's loss of faith and his just feeling of complete apathy. And to me, this just wasn't believable, if I'm being honest. They spent a week together total before she died, and yes, it is heavily hinted at that they did have feelings for each other in the past, but we don't see any interactions that facilitate these feelings. So to me, I just didn't buy it when her death caused such an intense turn for the worst in Sazed. So the world building in this book was good, but it didn't feel as good as it could have been to me, because we got to see a few villages early on from Sazed's POV, and we got to see the Conventicle of Saran, I think that's what it's called. It's where the Inquisitors were staying. The Lord Ruler just died. The whole final empire should be open to us for exploration, and I just didn't really vibe with how we saw a handful of villages from Sazed and the Conventicle, and then we're stuck in Luthadel for the rest of the book. I just felt like surely we could have explored more. Well, we did get to learn a bit more about the world when it comes to its history. We learned more about the Hero of Ages, Alendi. The magic system in this gets a really nice expansion with Furukami. I'm not going to go into detail about this. If you're in the spoiler section, I presume you've read the book. You already know how the magic system works, but I just wanted to say I did really enjoy this expansion, and it was really cool seeing how investiture works with Furukami. So moving on to everything I disliked in this book, I don't even have that many cons for this book, to be honest. In terms of talking points, I only have Elend, Vin, the magic system, and the politics. And the stuff with Elend isn't really a con, but I'll expand on that later when I talk about Elend. I think it really goes to show you how repetitive this book is. The fact that I have so few cons, but they still so heavily outweigh all the good that's in this book. So as I've already explained earlier in the video, this book was so much longer than it needed to be. It had no right being close to 600 pages. The politics in this book offered me very little to keep me intrigued in them, if I'm being fully honest. It was interesting seeing Elend compromise on his ideals, seeing how far he has to go with that, and it was interesting seeing how in the assembly some of the scam merchants were just as bad as the noblemen. Besides that, the rest of the politics felt like a really dull repetition of the same meetings regarding the armies that were camped outside, and they just really offered virtually nothing to keep me interested in them. Repetition was really common in this book, even the passages that come before the start of the chapters. In this book, at a certain point, they became all about Quan's text that Seize finds at the start of the book. These just got really repetitive. It felt like I read that text like 100 times over. And I don't know if this was done because at the end it's revealed the deepness edited the bottom of those pages. I don't know if that's why that was done. If there was a difference in some of those texts being repeated, let me know in the comments and I'll concede the point. But it just really felt so unnecessarily repetitive, and it just got to the point where it was tedious to read. And I will be saying tedious a lot in this portion of the video because there, as I said, there really isn't a better word for me to describe this book. Okay, let's talk about Vin. Vin in this book plain sucked. I hated Vin in this book, and it just made me completely lose interest in her as a character, and it even had knock-on effects on my interest in her for the Hero of Ages. And it's just such a shame because in the Final Empire, I really loved Vin as a protagonist. Vin is a constant mess of teen angst in this book. She's constantly worrying about her relationship with Elend. She spends the first, I think it was the first 40% of this book worrying whether Elend really loves her or not. And then Elend grows a pair of balls and then he's able to do more stuff without her. And then she's all worried that, oh no, maybe Elend doesn't need me anymore. Oh no. And it was just so fucking annoying to read because she repeats it so many times in the book. It was tedious. Then when Elend risks his own life to meet with, I think it was what Yace he met with, Vin just turns into a complete cold killing machine and she attacks Set with Zane. And then after she does this, she realizes, oh my god, that was a horrible act, and she has this mini breakdown, and it was just such a cringe-worthy journey for me with Vin, and I had to really suffer through it. It was so melodramatic. After all this shitty melodrama, Vin marries Elend in what is probably the most sappy wedding ceremony ever performed by Sazed, and it just made me think to myself, what was the point of all of this? I know there was relevance to her characterization, but it just felt to me like she was already past this point after the Final Empire. Like, we heard from her herself towards the end of Final Empire that she learned to trust thanks to the crew. I don't see how she was at the point she was shown to be at during Well of Ascension. And you might be thinking to yourself, Smiko, what the fuck are you saying? She's traumatized, you idiot. It's not that easy to get over. And I know it's not. We're 4,500 pages almost into fucking Stormlight Archive, and Shalin and Kaladin are still going through the ringer to this day, and they're probably not going to be done by the end of book 5. I know it's not that easy to get through the trauma, but Vin made it look easy in the Final Empire. It took her a total of 2 months, and she was big chilling in those noble mansions at the balls. She gets very comfortable very quickly as Valette Renault, and she's just going around falling in love with the first guy she meets. It just seems to me like Vin made a whole lot of progress in the first book mentally, and then I'm supposed to believe in a whole year compared to a few months in Final Empire. After a whole year after Final Empire, she hasn't made enough progress with Ellen to be past this point that we have to watch her at. I just didn't believe it, really. Now, speaking on Ellen and Vin's relationship, I thought that after the third book that I would finally come around to their relationship. I think they're actually a good couple, but now that I finished the trilogy, it's just confirmed to me that they have no chemistry and never will. I just did not enjoy reading their time together at all. I'm aware that they're a couple in love, but their relationship is just a fucking all-tell, no-show relationship. They spend a lot of time reminding us verbally that they're in love, but they never really show us them just being together naturally as a couple, doing things that would give you off the impression that they are in love. And I feel like when it comes to that kind of relationship and the emotions pertaining to it, that should be conveyed through actions rather than words. I haven't read any YA novels yet, but this is how I imagine it to be, and this is not helped at all by the fact that there's a love triangle thrown into the mix. Vin keeps meeting up with Zane for sparring matches, and it's just so repetitive and boring. And then it gets to the point where there's a multiple page fight, and it's just them shooting coins at each other, and it's just so tedious, once again, tedious to read. Like, why is this even a thing? Like, it's very obvious Zane is manipulating Vin. But at the same time, surely Vin is smart enough once she learns Zane is Straff Venture of all people's Mistborn, that she would kind of have the fucking common sense to kind of end that relationship right there. But she keeps going for the fucking stupid sparring matches constantly. Obviously, by this point in the story, we've learned that not everybody on the enemy side is a bad person, but of all the people, the Mistborn for the enemy, come on, like, seriously, you should know better than that at this point, I would think. While I'm talking about Vin, I have to address a glaring issue in this book, and that is Juralumin. Apologies in advance, I will be pronouncing this wrong probably every time, but Juralumin is the worst addition in the whole trilogy. I despised the use of this in this book. The significance of Juralumin to the plot is very obvious, but holy shit, can you not see how bad an idea it is to give your main character a constantly reusable get out of jail free card whenever she's in a pinch during a fight? Can you not have the foresight to think that that's probably not a good thing to include in your book? There's at least 3 times in this book where Vin only wins because of the bullshit that is Juralumin. He's about to get completely curb stomped by an assassin when they rush the assembly hall to try and kill Elend, and Vin is down to like, I think it's the last thug, and he's gonna kill her, and then she just hey, she burns Juralumin and she gets this power boost to her pewter and she turns the guy's fucking face into pulp with a headbutt. It was so undeserved of a win. And then it happens again when she's fighting Zane. Zane is finessing her. He's consistently shown to be the better Mistborn, and then he's beating Vin. He has atium, she doesn't, and he's beating her so badly, and she's dying once again because of Zane this time. And then, hey, Juralumin, she burns it. She can control Tensoon now. Yay, she's saved. She pushes Zane off of her with fucking Tensoon. And then that eventually leads to her killing Zane. Now, I liked Zane very much as an antagonist, so to see him lose to Vin this way was infuriating. I'm not expecting him to beat Vin. I'm not expecting him to kill Vin, but to have him lose in such a way was just such bullshit. It was ridiculous. I'm sure there's more examples of this, but those were just the main offenders for me. And this continued on into the raid on Luthadel. Now, that final battle was phenomenal. I had goosebumps the whole time, and I was reading at double speed. It was such a good final battle. And then Vin showed up. And when Vin showed up, I instantly deflated. The tension was completely removed from the battle because you can already tell what's going to happen when she shows up because of this bullshit medal that's introduced. You know for a fact she's just going to show up, do some flashy shit with some coins or with their swords because she likes to do that. And then, lo and behold, she's lost all her medal reserves. She's out completely. And she says, oh wait, but there's more. And I'm like, fuck! Yes, I know there's more. I forgot the fucking Juralumin. It's so annoying. And she burns that. And she can control the whole Colossus army. I was really just sitting there like, God damn it, Vin, you really ruined this for me. I know you saved everyone, but you really ruined this for me. And it was just such a dissatisfying end to a battle that had really high tension for me. Now, in defense of Juralumin, I can see how maybe this bullshittery was done intentionally. I can see maybe it playing into how people fear and revere Vin for feats that we know as readers she couldn't achieve without Juralumin. That would play into the whole theme of the prophesied hero that I was interested in, and it would kind of show how the hero can be a more mundane person that only finds themselves in their position because of conveniences or other factors that people who revere them just wouldn't be aware of. However, I'm so disappointed with this book, I'm not even going to give it the credit and assume that that was intentional all along, even though it's possible. It is Sanderson. I am well aware of how good he is. Vin in this book really reminded me of Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, bear with me when I say this, but in that movie, there's a scene where Tony Stark he's angry at Peter, and he basically ends up saying to Peter, if you're nothing without the suit, you don't deserve the suit. Now, that line really stuck with me when he said it, and in this book, Vin is just the complete personification of that line. If Vin was not a Mistborn in this book, I would not care about her at all. The Juralumin usage and her annoying teen angst just annoyed me to the point where I just lost interest in her as a whole, as a character. And the only interest I even had in her in the end is how is she able to do what she can do, and whether or not she's really the hero of ages. I did not care about her character at all anymore. In Vin's defense, I think she showed tremendous growth with her interactions with Tensoon. I really like those parts with her. I think Sanderson really improved on this issue I had with Vin when it comes to Stormlight. There's not a single character with abilities in Stormlight that I wouldn't love to follow if they didn't have those abilities. And granted, it's a bit of a given in Stormlight because you, in a sense, you can't really get those abilities without being worthy in a way. So when it comes to Elend, I'm kind of indifferent again towards him in this book. I just didn't really enjoy him at his idealistic and naive stage. Now, this is obviously a fault of his that he has to develop from, and I can't just expect him to be a more decisive, demanding, and confident king that fits the position right from the get-go. But that being said, I just didn't really enjoy the arc that he went through in this book to reach the point that he's at the start of Hero of Ages, which I did really enjoy. It was just a repeat of him having the same meetings, and then he had his own portion of the relationship melodrama, which was also really fucking repetitive. And then he does this all the while being chastised by Tyndall for not acting like an actual king should. There was just so many times as well where we had to see him be Mr. Honorable, and it got really tedious. Now, I did really enjoy watching Elend grow a spine, and he was able to, risk his life meeting with Yace and with Straff. And I did really enjoy watching him grow out of his inferiority complex that he has towards Kelsier. That was really good to see. However, he's just too naive and idealistic for me to enjoy in this book. It's not to say that I dislike his arc at all. I didn't. I'm just indifferent towards it. It wasn't very entertaining for me to read his arc. He went from going to meetings to predictably losing his position as king, going on more meetings, then going on a hike with Vin and Spook, and then he gets his kingdom handed to him on a silver platter by his overpowered as fuck wife. And then he gets to become the most powerful Mistborn at the end. And the thing with Elend versus Vin is that in a way Vin didn't deserve any of the wins she got, but the only thing Elend got that he deserved was actually losing his position because he brought that on himself. The thing with Elend is that he was on his way to deserving what he got. He didn't deserve it yet. And I think that realization is what really helped Elend to get to the point that he's at the start of the next book. So I will give it props, even though I didn't enjoy it. Okay, so I'm editing the video now before I upload it tomorrow, and I realized I never came back to talk about how I did not like how Tyndall was used in Elend's arc. At the start of Well of Ascension, Elend is at probably the biggest challenge of his life, and he has to make some of the biggest decisions of his life as well. He has to decide if he's going to compromise on his ideals in order to do what he needs to as a king. Now, this situation for Elend should have provided a really big challenge that I would have looked forward to seeing him try and get through. But instead, what we got was a teacher that just really conveniently showed up out of nowhere. I didn't like how Tyndall just showed up as soon as Elend needs her, out of the blue. Having Tyndall just show up to be his babysitter just didn't work for me. Tyndall in this book is just a plot device, and I did not like how she was used as one. And since finishing this trilogy, I've started Wheel of Time, and if you went out with your mum and said, "Mom, I want Aes Sedai," and she said, "But we have Aes Sedai at home," when you got home, Tyndall is the Aes Sedai you have at home. She is just a worse Aes Sedai. She's a dollar store version. And yeah, I just did not really enjoy how she was used. I did like her as a character, as I said. I just didn't like her as a plot device. Overall, I wouldn't say this book is bad, but it's certainly far from being good as well. There is enough good in this book for me to justify saying that it's okay and not just some piece of mid. So for that reason, I will give this book a 6 out of 10. So the final book in the trilogy, The Hero of Ages, is definitely my favourite of the three. All the characters are at their best in this book besides debatably Vin, but there isn't a single POV in this book that I did not enjoy. So The Hero of Ages, I think it picks up another year after the Well of Ascension. So when we meet up with everybody, Elend has established an empire for himself, and the world is also dying. The ash is falling constantly and heavier. The mists are out all day and all night, and there's constant earthquakes. So these are these huge supply caches that the Lord Ruler used to store huge amounts of supplies and resources. And basically everybody splits up to try and find one of these. Vin, Elend, Ham, and Set go to Phaedric City, I think it's called. Spook, Sazed, and Breeze go to Urto. Definitely butchering that pronunciation. Lastly, we have Tensoon, and he's in the Kandra homeland. Again, I don't really have much to say for the spoiler-free section for this book. It's probably less than the other two books even. The characterization for this peaked. The ending was perfect. Sanderson absolutely nailed the ending in this book. So Elend struggles with the balance between doing what's right and what needs to be done. Vin fully realizes who she is. Sazed is dealing with really bad depression after Tyndall's death, and he's also struggling with apathy that he feels towards his responsibilities that are increasing in number as the ambassador for Luthadel appointed by Elend, and he's also struggling with being the impromptu leader of the rest of the Tarsmen. Tensoon slowly comes to the realization that maybe what's happening in the world takes precedence over Kandra tradition. Spook gets a fantastic arc where he stops being the dismissible boy he was in previous books. We also start to see more from Ruin, and we get a fantastic villain in him, and we also start to learn more about how the Lord Ruler Rashek really helped humanity. So the magic system gets another expansion in this book in the form of Hemalurgy. Now, Hemalurgy is the use of metallic spikes for the transfer of powers from one person to another. We get more world building in this book too. I really enjoyed the exploration of Kandra culture, but overall I felt like the world building still left a bit to be desired in this trilogy. There's so much more of the world to explore that we just didn't get to see, unfortunately, and I would have liked to see a bit more of it. So getting into spoilers already, I only really have one con for this book, and then I have some slight annoyances which aren't big enough for me to consider them to be negatives of the book. And that con is Vin's plot armor. Yes, Vin dies at the end. right at the very end. But for the rest of the book, her plot armor is layered on too thick, starting off with the Well of Ascension. Now, in Well of Ascension, not even Well of Ascension, in Final Empire, she gets the Deus Ex Machina from killing the Lord Ruler with the Mist. In Well of Ascension, she gets 3 wins at least that I counted from just the pure bullshit that is Duralumin. And now in The Hero of Ages, she's rightly losing to Marsh. Marsh is just finessing her. And then she fucking gets the use of the Mists again to try and control him, which just causes him to flee because she spooks Rune. It's just so annoying. We constantly see her get wins that she just does not deserve. They are not earned. And it feels like the only win she gets in the whole trilogy that she really deserves is her kill on Shanna Lariel and the final win she gets versus Rune when she's using the power of preservation. There's also this final battle between Vin and I think it's like 13 different Inquisitors, and it was just insane to me how for the first time we're seeing Inquisitors in such big numbers. And the amount of times I almost fell asleep reading that battle, it was insane. There was just zero tension for this whole fight, and just felt like such a slog of pushes and pulls, and this is not helped by the fact Vin is eventually going to just get a power boost to save the day from the Mists. And I did really like Marsh's inclusion in this. I love Marsh in this book, but it just didn't help it be any less lackluster of a fight overall. Now, surprise, surprise, a couple of my annoyances are with Vin as well. Now, there was this really good chapter. I can't remember what page it was on. I think on page 229, Vin is having this self-reflection, and she talks about how she really forced herself to rely more on her street side during Well of Ascension because she thought it would give her the power to protect those she loves. Reading this initially, I actually enjoyed it, but then I slowly came to the realization that it's actually annoying as fuck because what she just said was not conveyed to me at all in Well of Ascension. All I got was her shitty melodrama. I shouldn't have to listen to Vin give a play-by-play playback of what she was feeling during Well of Ascension. These ideas and emotions should already have been conveyed to me previously. I should already have these in my head without her fucking going on and on about them. Rather than Ellen in this book, I was kind of indifferent towards like the first half of Vin's POVs. I found her to be quite bland by this point in the story. I just don't really care about her anymore. But I will say, however, it did get a lot more entertaining to read her POVs once Ellen and Vin went to the second ball onwards in Phaedric City. You also get some pretty good interactions between Vin and a Colossus named Human, and this really showed off her growth that she got from her interactions with Tensoon during Well of Ascension. I really enjoyed seeing how crafty Vin has gotten in how she ditched her 2 tails at Yeoman's ball, and I also really enjoyed seeing her use Yeoman's fate against him to try and get him to see things her way too. I also love how she got this idea from facing off against Yeoman that you should make your enemy think that they're 2 steps ahead of you to deceive them into being overconfident, and she took that idea and she applied it to her resistance against Rune. That's pretty much all I have to say for Vin. Before the second ball, she kind of got to the point where she was just a character for me that's just there, and I have to try and get through her point of views. But from that point onwards, it was really enjoyable, and watching her become a shard vessel was great, and watching her give that final ultimate sacrifice as well was really good. So since I mentioned Human while I was talking about Vin, I might as well talk about the reveal about how Colossus are made. I really loved how this was done. It had the subtle hints that Sanderson is so good at doing. The wordplay used when the Colossus referred to itself as human, and then Vin mistakenly takes that to be the creature's name, was so good. And I loved watching her slowly come to the realization that Colossus are actually made from humans. You see this coming a mile away when Human tells Vin that she can now make more Colossus for them because of noticing the blood on her shirt and that she's been fighting. Ellen in his book was fantastic. We got to see him struggle with his actions as they start to become more and more reminiscent of what the Lord Ruler used to do in the past. We also get to see Ellen come to understand the Lord Ruler more and more as his actions that he's forced to consider for the greater good get worse and worse. So as we're seeing Ellen on a seemingly endless battle versus a big horde of Colossus, we get to see him have a new struggle in how he keeps getting stronger and stronger, but still fails to protect all his people, and he keeps killing and killing, but new problems keep constantly arising for him. All the while, Ellen still wants to do what's right, but he just has to compromise on his ideals, and that's a lesson he learned after the events of Well of Ascension. I really enjoyed Ellen's growth into a king that trusts his decisions, no matter how heinous they may come off as, but at the same time, he still wants to be a good man, and he would even rather leave to go back to Luthadel and leave Vin in Phaedric City, just so he doesn't have to invade a city using Colossus. I felt like everyone in this book got a perfect ending to their arc, and Ellen was by no means an exception. His final battle versus the Colossus at the end of the book was amazing, and his death was actually a big shock to me. It really was a testament towards his selflessness towards the people and the entire empire, how he just stood off against the whole Colossus army just to earn the people in the caves a mere few seconds of extra survival. Okay guys, so we're back the next day. I had to take a break yesterday. I literally went the whole day making that video. I woke up, done the script, and then I got to recording, and it just got to like 9 p.m. I hadn't eaten yet, so I just made food real quick, and then I just was not in the mood to continue making the video. So I'm back again today. I also realized I never showed off the book when I got the Hero of Ages. Forgot again. Sorry, I'll try and fix this in the next review video, but just showing off the book real quick again. So if you haven't noticed already, we also have a guest today. She's right there behind me. She'll be there in the background chilling. So back to what I was saying about Elend. We got to see how Set and Yeoman played off against his growth throughout the book, and I thought that was really great. We got to take a closer look at Set and see that he's a much kinder man than he lets on. It's kind of similar to Breeze. So Set is a man with good in him, but he's already learned the ruthlessness that Elend is still in the process of developing, and he represents that side of Elend, which is the ruthless king, that he needs to make a balance with between that side and the side of him which is still the idealistic scholar. And Yeoman played into that idealistic side of Elend just as good as Set played into the ruthless side. It was like watching Elend debate a more faithful version of his old idealistic self, because Yeoman always saw Elend as a tyrant that just wants to conquer. I really loved Yeoman as an antagonist in this book. He's this obligator that still has faith in the Lord Ruler, and he still thinks that the Lord Ruler is around, and he believes that everything that's happening in the world is still part of the Lord Ruler's plan. But Yeoman also cares so deeply for his people that he eventually ends up breaking his faith towards the Lord Ruler, and he ends up siding with Vin and Elend to protect as many people in the city that he can and trying to secure the city. Yeoman also proves to be up there with the best of them when it comes to planning and like subtle manipulations, and we can see this so often when he just keeps on besting Elend and Vin. It's like Vin and Elend are playing checkers, and then Yeoman is just out here playing 4D chess. They literally can't compete when it comes to the mind games. And it was just really good to see how Yeoman tricked Vin into being captured. When Elend was first comparing himself to the Lord Ruler, it really annoyed me, because I have a history of hating this kind of comparison in stories. So you have this like moment where a character will compare himself to the villain, and he'll be like, well, this guy killed like 20 people and he's gonna keep killing more, but if I kill him, I'm a killer too, and then I'll be just as bad as him. And I really despise these kind of comparisons, because I feel like they kind of just remove all the relevant context, and they just boil the problem down to its simplest point so that the comparison actually makes sense. But I really loved how Elend showed me a new side to this argument I had with myself that I just hadn't been made aware of before in the past. So there's a moment where Elend is coming to understand the Lord Ruler more, and he says like basically that the Lord Ruler is more altruistic than people perceived him to be, and that he wasn't really evil or spiteful, he just got carried away sometimes. So this line just made something click for me that I hadn't been paying attention to before in the past, and that was perspective. Now, the main theme of this book is probably trust. I didn't really care about that at all, I wasn't paying attention to that. But if in the Well of Ascension, what I loved the most as a theme was the prophesied hero and all of that, what I loved in Hero of Ages was the theme of perspective, and this line from Elend, the realization it gave me, just made me really pay attention to this as a theme throughout the whole book. I was so mad at Elend comparing himself to the Lord Ruler. I just assumed it was just another case of ignoring the context, but it was really just a case of coming to understand the Lord Ruler's perspective. You know, we always perceived him to be this evil tyrant because of what we learned during the first book, and we just never really took a minute, or at least I didn't, take a minute to try and understand why the Lord Ruler did what he did. This gets reinforced continually throughout the book as we learn more about Rashek and the burdens that he carried and how Rune influenced his mind over time. And you know, we always assumed Elend to be better than Rashek because we've always known Elend to be a good man from the start since he was introduced. But really, what is the difference to somebody whose village is about to be run down by Koloss sent by Elend and somebody whose village is about to get run down by Koloss sent by Rashek? Spook's arc also leaned into this theme of perspective. When we first meet Spook, we learn about the city of Earthho and how there's this tyrant ruler in charge now, and his name is Quellion, aka the Citizen. And we learned that he's just as bad as any nobleman would have been if he was in the same position. Because we're reading from Spook's POV, we just assume Quellion to be the bad guy. You know, he's the evil one, he's the one killing innocents, he's the one burning people alive, he's the one kidnapping people secretly to get more mistings. We just assume him to be the bad guy because from what we've seen, he is. And when Belle there comes to plead with Spook, implying that her brother is actually a good guy and that he wasn't always this way, we just assume from our limited perspective that she has to be obviously biased as his sister. You know, we think she's just in denial the whole time, and then eventually at the climax of the arc we learn that Rune was influencing Quellion's mind the whole time actually. And I just really loved how this kind of showed you how, you know, your perspective can be so biased to the point where you don't even want to consider other people's. You know, we think we already know all the details regarding Quellion and how he runs the city because we watch Spook as he discovers more and more about the topic. And we just don't even take the time to take a step back and maybe consider Quellion actually might be a good guy doing all this. So getting into the highlights of the book now, for me they were Sazed, Spook, Tensoon, and Rune. So starting off with Rune Rune was a phenomenal villain in this book. I love how Sanderson uses the shards as villains because they're not really evil at all. They're just forces of nature. Well, not forces of nature, forces of human nature rather. Seeing just how much subtle manipulation and deception Rune used to piece together his master plan of escaping his prison and finding the rest of his body, it was just mind-boggling to watch it all unfold, and we start to understand so much more through Rune's machinations. And there was actually so much we came to understand through all of his actions that I had to make a list. My memory is really bad, guys, so I actually had to just make a list so I could read off. So we better understand why the Lord Ruler's acts get to such a heinous degree. It's because Rune was influencing his mind just as bad as other people's. We also understand why Vin was so fixated on finding the atium in this book and the last book. It's because Rune was infecting her mind through the hemalurgy with her earring. So we see how Rune was manipulating Zane the whole time throughout Well of Ascension, and we start to understand why Rune would want to do this. We see that he wants to get Zane to try and get Vin to go to the Well of Ascension. And we also start to see how Rune was able to orchestrate some of the destruction that was on Earth though by manipulating both sides of the conflict there. We see how he used the Inquisitors as his servants and how he placed Colossus in the hands of key players in the story to use them at the most opportune time. And there was just so much subtle planning from Rune, and it was just really, really impressive. This also led to more of an appreciation for the Lord Ruler himself, because through the passages at the start of the chapters, we learn a bit more about how Rashek used the power at the Well of Ascension and how he set everything up, and through the supply caches and yeomen, we learn more about all the planning Rashek put into the eventual defeat of Rune. Like how he geniusly hid the atium deposit under a big blinding supply of metal that Rune just wouldn't be able to see, and how he secretly used the obligators to extract this while keeping up the illusion it was being packed up and sent to Luthadel. We also get the revelation that Rashek turned all the packmen who went to the Well of Ascension with him and Alendi into the first generation of Kandra, and he made this contract with them, which the Kandra held up as their religion. And this was just such a crucial element in keeping Rune away from the atium in the end. Next up is Tensoon, and it was almost hard to believe that Tensoon, Sazed, and Spook got such great arcs, all three of them in this book, but then again it is Sanderson, so I guess it's not that hard to believe. And when we first meet up with Tensoon, he's being held captive in the Kandra homeland for breaking contract during the Well of Ascension. It's through Tensoon's POV that we learn more about Kandra culture and just how devoted they are towards the contract, and we see just how much of an anomaly Tensoon is among his people. And it was just really good to see Tensoon slowly come to disagree more and more with how the Kandra act in the homeland and just their general complacency with what's going on in the world. And after unsuccessfully trying to convince the rest of the Kandra that they need to see the error in their ways and trying to get them to take action, he escapes and meets up with some of the crew, and he's the one that gets Sazed to end up coming to the homeland. So, quick side note, I thought it was kind of weird how Sanderson insists on giving every POV character a love interest. I mean, in the first book, Vin has Elend, and then in the second book, Elend has Vin. We start getting POVs from Bree, so he has to have Arian, and then we also start getting more POVs from Say, so he has to have Tindwyl. And then we even have Zane in Well of Ascension, and he has Vin. And then in the Hero of Ages, we start to get Spook chapters, so now he has to have Bell there. And then in Hero of Ages as well, we start to get more of a focus on Tensoon POV, so he has to have a love interest as well. Even the fucking Kandra has to have one, and we meet Milan. Now, to be fair, it wasn't really made specific if they have like the teacher student kind of thing, or if it is a love interest. I think the only POVs that didn't get a love interest were Kelsier and Marsh, but they barely count because they both love the same person and she's in the ground already. And then there's Straff as well, who never had one, and Straff isn't even capable of love. So getting on to Spook's arc now, his arc was phenomenal and probably my favorite of the whole lot. And in his arc, we kind of see how people's desires can be used against them and how their desires can be used to manipulate them. And Sanderson did something I just didn't expect. He took the least noticeable, most dismissible character in the whole story and put him into the spotlight and made him into what would be my favorite character if the ending of Say's arc wasn't so fucking perfect. Spook finally steps into the spotlight in this book and we learn more about him as a person. We see that he actually is able to see a lot more than his 10 enhanced senses enables him to. Spook sees through people to the point where he's even able to understand them more than they do themselves. Spook was the one that suggested to Sayes that maybe he was acting the way he was because that was how he thought Tindwyl would have wanted him to be acting. And we also learn more about the insecurities insecurity Spook is feeling towards his uselessness as a member of the crew and his helplessness and guilt he felt after the death of his Uncle Clubs. Spook's journey from this into a more capable, dependable, and confident man, and seeing him have this desire to be somebody that can make a difference the same way Kelsier was such an incredible highlight of this book. And then we get the final standoff between Quellion and Spook towards the end of his arc, and it was just so intense. It had me on the edge of my seat for the whole chapter. And then we get Spook denying Rune's influence, and it was just very reminiscent of Dalinar's "you can't have my pain" moment. Spook's development as the survivor of flames was really the embodiment of "with great power comes great responsibility." The more power he gained in both allomantic ability and influence over the people, the more he realized he needs to help the citizens of Ertol, and it was pretty similar to how Kelsier realized he has to help the Ska. Finally, my favorite character in the whole series, Sazed. Now, Sazed in this book is still dealing with the loss of Tyndall at the end of Well of Ascension, and he's struggling with really bad depression and apathy, and all the while he has to also deal with the responsibility he's gaining as being Elend's ambassador for Luthadel and also being the impromptu leader of the rest of the Terracemen. Sazed has also stopped wearing his metal mines because he has lost his faith, and he would see it as a hypocrisy to still be using them. And after the loss of Tyndall, he also refuses to follow any religions that don't answer the questions that he has, nor will he follow a religion that has any conflicts in logic. As I mentioned earlier, there's a moment where Spook says to Sazed that he's only acting the way he is because that's how he thinks Tyndall would want him to act. You could tell this was true, as there were numerous times throughout the book where Sazed is about to enjoy an act of scholarship and he just forcefully cuts himself off in defiance of the scholar that he really is. So after Sazed is given new hope by Tensoon, he goes to the Kandra homeland, and he eventually comes to this realization that he shouldn't focus on the doctrines of religions but on the people who follow these religions themselves. And he basically comes to the conclusion that it's not about having all your questions answered, it's about wanting to have faith. Honestly, guys, I was kind of baffled by this revelation. I mean, it felt to me like Sazed basically came to the conclusion that he should go back to acting how he always used to act before Tyndall died, but at the same time also don't ask questions you don't know the answers to. So maybe I missed something from this. If you can enlighten me on this, let me know in the comments. I'm going to fast forward to the end of the book now, because if you're in this section you should already know what happens, so I don't need to give you a full summary. But by the end of the story we find out that Sazed all along has been the hero of ages. Now, I'm not going to lie, guys, if you did not figure this out for yourself at basically the start of the book, I think it was chapter 3, then that was just an L on your part. I'm not going to lie to you. At the start of this book, at chapter 3, there's the passages at the start of the chapters, right? There's one where you already know by this point it's the hero of ages in those passages, and he finishes a sentence with I think. Who ends their sentences like that? Sazed all the time, Tyndall did it, Rashek done it, and Quan done it, and I think some of the Terrace refugees might have done it. Can't remember, if I'm being honest. Now, obviously other characters in the book have ended their sentences like this in the past, like I think Breeze did and Ellen did a couple times. But Sazed said this so many times in book 1 that it started to annoy me, to the point where I just always associated that as something that Sazed said. It's just a Sazed trait to me, even though it's probably more of a Terrace trait. So this to me was just a dead giveaway, and that's not even to mention the fact that all these passages are written in a scholarly form. So it was really painfully obvious that Sazed was the hero of ages. So predictability aside, the way Sazed was revealed to be the hero of ages was actual perfection. The way he used all the different religions he preached in the past books to fix the world. What could have been a more fitting ending for the arc of a man who struggled the most with his faith and his faith in deities, to then himself become a god at the end? It honestly left me speechless, and I really couldn't have hoped for a better ending, and it really showed how much careful planning Sanderson put into all of his books. The ending was also perfect for Spook. He ended up being the man in charge, and the way he was teed up for that was really beautifully done. So before I wrap this up, I just wanted to say that I felt like Ham and Marsh were a bit wasted. Marsh was a really fascinating character in this book, and I feel like he could have been explored a bit more. And Ham, even he was one of the last survivors. I think he was like one of 3 of the original crew members that actually survived, so I would have liked a bit more of expansion on his character. This book was great. I don't really have much more to say as a conclusion. I'm going to give this book a 9 out of 10. That should give the trilogy an average rating of 7.8, but I'm going to round that up to an 8 out of 10 for Mistborn Era 1. Overall, it was a really good read with its own ups and downs. It did feel a bit like a worse Stormlight to me, but that's not really a diss towards Mistborn. It's just that Stormlight is just that good. For the POV characters, I think the ranking for me is Sazed, Spook, Tensoon, Ellen, Vin, and then I'll throw Breeze in underneath Vin just so that I don't get hate for putting Vin last. I honestly cannot see how people put Vin on the same tier as maybe Kaladin or Dalinar, or even above Kaladin in some cases. But it is all subjective, you know, people are always going to like or dislike characters more than you do, so I guess it's fair enough. Thank you very much for watching this video. It actually took a pretty long time to make, a lot longer than I was expecting. The next review should be on The Eye of the World. I am starting Wheel of Time finally. So that's it. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.